Hello everybody and welcome to this week's wet track guide. Yesterday I did a sort of analysis of the wet weather driving, but everyone pointed out to me that in time trial the grip levels are different. So I thought how could it be that much different, but it turns out quite a lot. So a little bit awkward, but anyway, went to the lobbies, set something up. It's much more realistic in the lobbies apparently, and I wanted to confirm that. I didn't think it would be that much different compared to time trials, but it turns out that there's multiple seconds between the two. So here I am in the Ferrari, braking for turn one, and I tried the intermediates and the slicks first just to get a feeling for comparing to time trial mode, and at least in the instance of the slicks, they were completely undrivable. You couldn't use them at all. Whereas the intermediates you could survive, but you were sliding everywhere and you were just generally a lot slower. So the heavy wet tires is the way to go on the wet track around the Red Bull Ring. And some of the issues that I mentioned yesterday still apply, and that is you can still brake on the racing line, you can still use a bit too much curb with steering lock added on. However, what I would say now is that you're still sliding around, but a lot more compared to the time trial. So there is that element of less grip, and it's definitely not easy to drive, definitely. And I did a couple of races yesterday with one of the drivers called Veloci Storm from France. Super fast guy. He gave me a lesson in the wet, honestly. We did 4 or 5 races together. I led 3 of them and he smoked me in 5 of them. I should have won the one, but I went wide. Okay, so in the Ferrari mid-engine car, a lot of snap oversteer, and this was confirmed earlier when I was racing against Veloci Storm, because he was in the McLaren, and we were both sort of four-wheel drifting during our race in the longer corners where you have to apply a lot of steering lock, and in the wet you always want to be pointing in as straight a line as possible, so you want to get your turning done before the apex, and that's one of the hardest things in the rain. Is you're braking later, you're trying to push harder, you're trying to catch the guy in front. So as you're braking later, you're realizing that you're going to start to miss the apex, and you turn a little bit too much past the apex, still have steering lock on, and then you struggle to get on the power, which gives you snap oversteer, and in some cases you can spin off in that way. So you want to avoid that. So brake a little bit earlier than you think, maybe 5 meters earlier, but do so that you get to the slowest point of your momentum before the apex. So when you turn into the apex, you've done the majority of your turning. When you get to the apex, you can start to straighten the wheel a bit sooner and accelerate out of the corner. I would say that the mid-engine cars can be fast around here, but it's going to take a lot of precision, and to race them is not going to be easy. So again, in this video I've done a comparison between the Ferrari and the Porsche, and I know that in the game the Porsche is a mid-engine car, but it behaves much more differently compared to all the other MR cars. So we're going to just finish these 2 laps, I think, in the Ferrari. Again, you can use the racing line, and this is my main criticism yesterday of the new physics. There is less grip, but it's still better to use the racing line, than it is to go off the racing line. Obviously, it depends. When you are trying to get acceleration, you want to be going in as straight a line as possible, so you tend to drive a little bit off the line on the exits, but on entry, and when you're hitting apexes, it's all dry lines, which is strange, because Red Bull Ring of all the tracks gets used quite a lot, and there should be a lot of rubber on the line, so you would expect it to be quite slippery. Heading now, we'll do, I think, 1 more lap here. I'm going to brake just at the 150 meter board. In real life, you brake at about, let's say in real life in the dry, you're braking around 100 meters. When it's raining, you brake at around 120, 130 meters. So in that regard, credit to Gran Turismo, you have to brake a lot earlier here to make the corner. That first corner, you can use a lot of curb, obviously avoid penalties wherever possible. Again, braking around 150 meters here. This corner is critical to try and get that turning done. I wasn't quite nailing it with the Ferrari, but you want to get on the power as soon as possible at the apex. If you're getting on the power before the apex, you may experience some snap oversteer on the exit. Heading now down to this downhill hairpin. This earlier in the races, I was making quite a few mistakes here, running a bit wide, and it's so critical to get on the curb on the inside here because there seems to be a lot of grip there. Now, in real life, when you're racing in the rain, you can use apex curbs to find some grip. You would see me do that in my video around Monza when I was racing in the rain. But yeah. So anyway, I think now we're going to cut to the Porsche, and let's try see if that engine layout is easier to drive in these conditions. Okay, so now we're in the Porsche. The difference here is that even though it's quote-unquote a mid-engine car, the car's actually still quite close to the rear wheels in terms of weight distribution. So this car tends to understeer a little bit more going into corners, but has better traction. And also with the longer gears in this car, there's a bit more torque and a bit more, how can you say, ability to ride out the wheel spin in lower gears and still be going in a forward direction. Whereas if you're in the Ferrari, you want to short shift up through the gears as much as you can. So if you come out of this corner in first gear in the Ferrari, you want to go second, third as quickly as possible, and the next corner as well. Whereas in the Porsche, you can stay longer in those lower gears and just rev out the car, and the traction, there is more traction, and you can go faster. My best time in the Porsche is around a 45.2, but Veloci Storm, sorry. Did I say Sport earlier? I meant Storm. Veloci Storm is capable of doing a 44.5, so there's a lot of lap time in this car if you get the lines right. We're taking generally the similar lines, but he was able to get that rotation done that I was talking about before the apex. So when he got to the apex, he was on the power, whereas I was still waiting for the front to come back to me. And when I race in real life, this is one of my problems in the slow corners anyway. So just so you know, in real life, it's not the fast corners that will necessarily define your speed. It's actually usually in the slower corners. We joke that it's easy to be fast in the fast corners, just because you need a little bit of bravery. If you have that, and if you're crazy enough to not be scared to crash your car, then you can be fast in the fast corners. But in the slow corners, the technical ability and your sense of timing is super important. So Veloci Storm definitely had that advantage over me in the races, which I did earlier with him. So here, braking again for T1, second gear in the Porsche. Want to get on the power as early as you can, obviously, as I said earlier. And here you just run the normal line up to turn 2 or 3, whatever you want to call it, at the Red Bull Ring. This kink, I think they class as a corner. You're going to brake again at 150. Just as you get to the line, you want to brake down to first gear, brake in a straight line, get your turning done, point the car straight, and accelerate in as straight a line as possible for the exit. With these slippery conditions, you may actually be quite a bit more tense in the races, because in the dry, if you find yourself losing out to the guy in front, you tend to hammer the throttle or brake a little bit more aggressively. But if you do that in the rain, if you lose your finesse in the rain, you're going to lose time, and he's going to pull away. And that is one of the more realistic elements in the game with the wet in the lobby modes, in the online racing. So I anticipate the FIA races are going to be a lot more frustrating for all of us, except for the Rain Masters. I've never necessarily been a Rain Master. I tended always if it's slick condition, if it's wet conditions but you're using slick tires, I tend to excel. But on wet tires, it's never been one of my strong points. I'm sort of average-ish, above average, but not something special. So heading now to the last corner, second gear, you can use the curb again, racing line. Be careful of the curb on the exit, although you can still use it quite a bit. And here you want to get the rear to rotate a little bit on the entry, so that you can square off the apex a bit more, maximize the exit, and run to the line. And there's your sort of lap guides and explanations of using driving in the wet in online mode, which is much better than the arcade time trials, which I'm really happy to say. And thanks to those of you who pointed out to me, and apologies to those of you who weren't happy that I got it wrong. Thanks to my channel sponsors, thanks to my Patreon members, and I'll catch you around the next lap.